out. You should have a Greek temples paper for me.
I forgot my paper. I did it, but I am.
You can email it to me or you can bring it next week, whichever you want. All right. No, I think I looked at them last week. I think I looked at everybody's.
I only did one.
Oh, okay. Okay. I'll look. Beautiful. And you're fused. Good. Okay. Yes. All right. Have I got them all? We're good? All right. Go ahead and get your reading questions out for this week. This is so fun. Today's exciting. I say that every week because every week is exciting. Okay, let me get my questions open too. Hang on. I feel like my brain is on a delay today. It's just not really. So, Athens saved Greece from Persia. Good for Athens. But Athens got pretty proud of that. Exceedingly proud of that. And let me read a section from Dorothy Mills to start us out. It says, Athens in the middle of the 5th century BC, that's the 400s BC, was in very truth, as Pericles had said, the school of Hellas. For half a century after the barbarian had been driven out of Greece, Athens went forward on the wings of youth, hope, and aspiration towards the fulfillment of her great ideal, that of the perfect citizen in the perfect state. Everything that was worthless in human life lay in that direction. Or worthwhile, I'm sorry. Everything that was worthwhile in human life lay in that direction. Freedom, order, and progress, truth and beauty, knowledge, virtue, and religion. And in the Greek world, it was Athens who was the leader in all these things. And Athens realized this. The ideals set forth by Pericles in the funeral speech placed her in the position of a chosen people in a barbarian world. Now, you might not remember that funeral speech. There's a historian named Thucydides. I'm going to read a couple of sections out of his book for you today. And he records a speech that Pericles made, the first group of people that died in this war that we're reading about. And he gave a speech, and he said, I'm not going to read the whole speech, it's very long. He said things like this. Our form of government does not enter into rivalry with the institutions of others. We do not copy our neighbors, but are an example to them. And we have not forgotten to provide for our weary spirits relaxations from toil. We have regular games and sacrifices. At home, the style of our life is refined, and the delight which we daily feel in all these things helps us to banish melancholy. Day by day, fix your eyes on the greatness of Athens until you become filled with the love of her. And when you are impressed by the spectacle of her glory, reflect that this empire has been acquired by men who knew their duty and had the courage to do it. We are an example. There was an early American colonial pastor who described America as a city on a hill. Are you with me, guys? Yeah, I don't know what's funny. Right, but it's very distracting. So we might have to move a couple of you over here. But if you can keep control of yourself, we don't, okay? Are we serious now? Okay. They're going to be an example to the world. But their example involves some problems. First of all, where did they get the money to build all those temples we looked at last week? Rhett. That's okay. Yes. Yeah, Delos. And the league that they put together to protect all these cities over here on the coast of what's today Turkey, Asia Minor, and all the islands. We'll just take the money and make Athens beautiful. We need to because Athens is the example to the world. so it needs to be beautiful. So it says, Dorothy Mills says, from being their liberator, we're setting Greece free. Athens gradually became their mistress. And little by little, she used her position in the League as a means to increase her power. So Pericles was accused, and justly, of taking the money to build up Athens. He did it. He's not sorry either. Here's his defense. He maintained that the beautifying of Athens was a symbol of her might and power, that the great buildings employed labor and encouraged commerce. Building projects give jobs, right? You put people to work, both of which added to her prosperity, and that these outward signs of her wealth and might added to her ability to protect her allies. We are better able to protect you, says Pericles, if we are rich and prosperous and imposing. People come to Athens and they check it out, like, ooh, Athens is big and important. I better do what she says. And if everybody does what we say, everybody will be safe. This is what Pericles says. But then Dorothy Mills makes this great statement, and I want to stop and look at it. Pericles was a great lover of all that was beautiful, and he was honestly desirous that the youth of Athens should grow up in a city that should be a joy forever, that would make them good and useful citizens, and inspire them with an abiding love for and pride in her. But there is a flaw in the character of a man who holds that the end, even if it is a great and glorious one, justifies any means. Have you ever heard that phrase, the end justifies the means? You heard this? Yes? What does it mean? Okay. Yes. It doesn't matter what you do, as long as your goal is good. Do you agree? So there are limits. So if I would like to build a food pantry, this is a good goal, right? Can I bank to finance it? Why not? Okay. So can I lie to people to get them to give me money for the food pantry? That's not it's a law. Should I do it? Okay. Can you think of an example? Can anyone think of an example where I do something rotten to get something good and it's okay? Rhett says that, you guys think it's okay, but can you give me an example? Oh, yeah, you said yes. So last year, oh yes, go ahead. Okay, so I am going to agree that war situations, because here's the proverbial, the Nazis knock on my door and I am hiding Jews, and the Nazis say, "Are you hiding Jews?" And I say, "No." And I have lied, but I have saved their lives. Now, yeah, Jesse, you chime in and then I will finish that story. It's not working out. Okay, I'll finish my Nazi story in a minute, but last year we read Robin Hood, the ones of you with me. And I had another class, I think I told you, where we had a rousing, spirited argument about whether or not Robin Hood was okay to steal from people, even though we're pretty sure those people got that money by stealing from other people to begin with. But he was a thief, and we just kind of love him because he was giving to poor people. But if you stop and think about it, well, he's running around. He's made himself the judge. You shouldn't have that money. That he should have that money. I just judge that I will give that money to him. Like, I'm not sure anybody made him the judge of that. So it's a tricky question. Yes. Well, just enough to live, just enough for the merry men to live and get their suit of Lincoln green every year. But But anyway, so there are I mean, we're not going to plumb the depths of this today, obviously. I just wanted to throw it out there that Pericles, Dorothy Mills comments that Pericles seemed to think that stealing money from the Allies to beautify Athens, since it had a good goal, was an okay thing to do. Yes, sir. But the understanding of the League was that money was for military purposes to protect everybody, not for building. When they handed over my money to Athens, I didn't know that's what you were going to do with the money. Yeah, Jesse.
That's like having someone, that's like telling your kid to go get candy from the store, and instead he has some candy, or like to buy something productive for helping the house, and then he goes out and he puts his money in like this little storage thing, and then later he buys a computer with it or something. That was kind of an extended.
Okay, that was an extended example. All right, misuse of funds, but yes. What were you going to say, Matthew? Oh, okay. So back to my Nazis. There are Christians who make the argument, and I think it's a good one, an important one to listen to, that it's not so much, it's when we sin, it's not so much what happens to the people around us as what happens to us inside our souls. So that when I lie and I tell the Nazis there are no Jews here, I've saved lives, but I've made a little mark on my soul. This is a hard philosopher who says this. So he maintains you should never tell a lie under any circumstances because it makes a mark on your soul. This is hard though, because I feel like if I were hiding the Jews, I would say, no, they're not here. And I wonder, it makes me ponder, then have I made a mark, marred, scarred my soul by that sin? Okay, we're gonna go around the table this direction. Yes. My soul, Rhett, is worth more. I'm sorry. My soul, my eternal soul is worth more than I'm just going to take a stand on that one. Yes.
Well, the thing is, you're hiding someone on the paper with religion, you're not trying to be missionaries in them, then even if you do end up saving their lives, they don't end up becoming a Christian.
But we don't know that when we save their lives, do we, Matthew? And there are other philosophers that would argue that everybody is good to some extent because God has made them. The image of God rests in them. So if I save them, it's also done something to me. Do you see what I mean? I've repaired my soul. I've adorned my soul, and it doesn't have as much to do with the other person as what I've done. So I'm sounding very selfish. I don't mean it to sound selfish like that, but it has an effect on me. When I do good to you, it doesn't just affect you, it affects me deep inside. Okay, one more comment, and then we're going to go back to Greece.
So as you say, just not to save them.
I don't know. This is why philosophy is so hard. I don't know. And thankfully, there's no persecuted group right now in my country that I have to hide in a closet and lie about. You know? I'm really thankful that I don't live in that environment where I have to make those hard decisions. Yeah, okay, Matthias, you get in on it too. Well, you know what I mean. Like, just always behind a fake wall or what. I'm thinking of all the movies and books I've ever read. Yes.
Yeah.
Under the table does not seem good enough. Okay, we're going back to Greece. Okay, maybe. All right, back to Greece with me. So the rest of Greece, except for Sparta, who was very jealous, was kind of okay with the situation. All right, not okay with it, but it seemed like it wasn't escalating. But there was a town that was not okay, and this was Corinth. Right now, I have my big map here, and then I'm going to take it down, and I have my smaller map. But here's what I want to show you. So here's Greece, and Attica is just this little area of Greece right here. And remember we talked about the fact that Greece is very rocky. It doesn't grow a lot of food. So when you have a lot of people living there, you either need to send out colonies which they did at one time, or you need to ship in food. And they shipped in food. Athens shipped in food from up here around the Black Sea. And they had this nice shipping going. And the other city-states were fine with that because they were just kind of going that direction, right? But they needed more food. So they started coming over here. They started going to Sicily. They started going to southern Italy to get food. And there were some towns who didn't like that because they thought they were horning in on their territory. And one of those towns was, oh, shoot. Yeah, can you just put that back up there for me? I stood on a chair, but I'm not going to climb on chairs in front of you. It's a bad example. Thank you, sir. All right, awesome. Okay, Corinth. Can you guys get your maps out? You have maps in the back of your book. You have a map of Greece that looks just like this. We're also going to do some on our timelines today. Everybody found your map? It's on page, if you find it, shout out the page. It's page 75, yes. And do you see on your map, we have the Peloponnese, which is this big blob that hangs down, and a very skinny piece of land that joins it to the rest, right? At the very place where that skinny piece of land joins the Peloponnese, that is Corinth. Could you mark Corinth on your maps, please? Put a dot right there. Corinth. And yes, this is the Corinth which received 1st and 2nd Corinthians as letters from Paul. It's this Corinth. This strip of land that joins them together, I think I talked about this before. It's fun to spell and it's fun to say. It's an isthmus. You gotta get the isthmus, I feel like a snake. Whenever you have a strip of land that joins two bigger pieces of land. So this is the Isthmus of Corinth. And so everybody look up here for a minute. Do you see how Corinth is right on the water here? And so if they want to go anywhere by sea, they come out this way. Does that make sense? Because they actually sometimes they drug their boats across the isthmus. Later they built a canal, but they would have to go around. So this side of Greece was where they hung out. This is where they shipped in food, and they don't want Athens coming over there. Does that make sense? And they got ticked off also about a situation with one of their colonies that Athens was messing with. This colony was having problems, and they went to Corinth, and they said, help us, Corinth. And Corinth said, no, we don't have time. So they went to Athens, and they said, help us, Athens. And they said, sure. And then Corinth said, keep your hands off our colony. I'm like, they asked you for help, and you wouldn't help. So the Corinthians got very upset. And they went to Sparta. And this is the next question I asked you. Of what did the Corinthians accuse Athens? You got it? Lay it on me.
So they said they were stealing from the deal.
They were what?
Stealing from the deal.
They were stealing? Okay, yes. What else? Anybody have something else? Oh, go ahead if you've got more.
They were also just mad because they weren't willing to fight them.
Okay. What did they think Athens was going to do? What did they say Athens is doing? Anybody write it down? Here's their speech. I'm not going to read the whole speech. Some of us, as you see, have been already enslaved. Athens is enslaving us. Long ago, they had made all their preparations for war. They have been on the warpath for ages. And then this great speech, they compare Sparta to Athens. They say, here, Sparta, you don't get it. You just don't get this city, this group of people. They are so different from you. They love different things. They are a different sort of people. The delegates said this, they are revolutionary, equally quick in the conception and execution of every new plan, while you are conservative, careful only to keep what you have, originating nothing not even acting when action is most necessary. They are bold beyond their strength. They run risks which prudence would condemn, where it is your nature, though strong, to act feebly, when your plans are most prudent, to distrust them, and when calamities come upon you, to think you'll never be delivered from them. They are impetuous. You are dilatory, means you drag your feet, you're slow. They are always abroad. You are always at home. For they hope to gain something by leaving their homes. But you're afraid that any new enterprise may imperil what you have already. And the speech goes on. You just don't understand. These people will take any chances. You don't understand the gutsiness of Athens because you're just in your little Spartan bubble, doing your thing, and you don't march out until you absolutely have to. So finally, they end their speech saying, if a man should say of them, in a word, that they were born neither to have peace themselves nor to allow peace to other men, he would simply speak the truth. Sparta listens, and it just so happens that when the Corinthian envoys come, there are some Athenian envoys there too, listening. And they have their say. Did anyone, that was the next question. What did the Athenians answer back? You're enslaving Athens, or you're enslaving Greece, sorry. You're just setting everyone up for war. What's their excuse? We rendered you a service at least as great as you rendered us. You remained at a distance while we had anything to lose. But when we went forth from a city which was no more, and fought for one of which there was small hope, and yet we saved ourselves and bore a part in saving you. What are they saying? What did we do? We saved you. Now, again, this reminds me of our ends justify the means argument. Discussion argument we had a little while ago. We saved you, therefore we can do anything we want. That seems to be what they're saying. Sounds a bit like what Pericles was saying. What? No, the point I don't know. You see, you guys are being too calculating. You guys are little Machiavellis, just like setting up for the future. I don't think they saved Greece because they were thinking 40 years from now we can be in charge of everyone. They saved Greece because Greece needed saving and it was an emergency. And if one went down, they would all go down one by one. But it just so happened that they used that position later. They go on to say, had the situation been reversed, and had it been the Spartans who had acquired an empire, they would have found it just as necessary as had Athens to rule with a strong hand, and they would have been even worse hated than Athens. You'd do it too. Which maybe you remember is also not an argument. Well, you'd do it too. You too. That's tu quoque, right? You too. No, that's never an argument for anything. So the Spartans do not listen to Athens, and we end up in a almost 30-year war between Sparta and Athens. Timelines. Where's my Kleenex? The one that has 500 BC on the top. And right about here, I want you to write 431 to 404. Peloponnesian War. It's got one P here and two N's. Just remember that. Technically, it's got two P's, but not in a row. 431 to 404. I'll get out of the way so everybody can see it. Is it big enough for you guys? Do I write big enough?
Wait, is Athens in the Peloponnese?
No, but they're fighting. That's a really good question. They are fighting. Over on this side. With a league of cities that have joined in Sparta. So I don't know why Athens doesn't get in the name of the war, but it involved Athens versus almost the entire Peloponnese. But it involves pretty much everything you see on this map, plus some stuff that was on that map that we'll get into next week. It wasn't geographically big as a war, but it was one of the biggest theaters of war that had ever been, because it was all happening at the same time. Dorothy Mills says something that I've got to read, even though it's kind of a digression, because I think it's fabulous. It describes what we're doing here every morning when we get together. It's not so that you can win Trivial Pursuit because you know the Peloponnesian War. It's not the purpose. It is this: the future is hidden from the eyes of each generation of men, but the past lies open before them. And to those who read the past with understanding comes enlightenment when similar difficulties surround them. For the past shows not only the beginning and the middle, but also the end of the story. When we read about Greek versus Greek, and then we look around in our own world and we see maybe unrest of brothers basically against each other, we can take heed. How does the story end? When we see a group of people gaining power, and abusing it, we look and we say, well, how does this end? How has it ended in the past? It's valuable to us. It's not the only reason to read it. Read it because it's cool. It's a great story, but it also has value because it enlightens us, Dorothy Mills said. Okay, so here's Pericles. Well, let's start with Sparta's plan. Sparta's game plan. Every year, we will march out and we will burn all their crops. Let's just burn everything so they have no food. Well, not convenient, but if you remember, Athens built those long walls all the way down to their harbor. So if they can get a boat into the harbor, they can get food in and out of the city. So this doesn't really help. So Pericles, he was still in charge, and he said, here's my game plan. Don't go out there. Sparta, gotta love them. They're great fighters. We don't want to go out there and just fight Spartans in the field. They will come a few years and they will burn things, and that's a bummer. But they'll get tired of it and they will just go away and all blow over. So everybody, if you live out in the country, everybody come inside the city. Come in here. We got those long walls. Everybody come inside the long walls. Set up little camps. We'll live inside here while they're rampaging outside. And it'll all be well. Now, say I'm a farmer. I live 2 miles outside of Athens, and I've come inside the city. And I go up on the walls and I'm looking and they're burning my house. They're burning the crops I planted. I'm not very happy with Pericles right now. Pericles, they're not burning your farm. I know. But Pericles was really just a good talker. And I don't mean that in a shifty way either, like he was being clever and tricking people. He was really persuasive, and the people loved him. And he was able to convince them, this will work. This will work, this plan. Stay inside. Nobody's dying. We can always plant new crops and build new homes, but we can't build new people can't build the same people after they're dead. But this is the last question I asked you for today. What happened early in the war that weakened Athens? What was it, Matthew? Plague. Plague broke out. You know what happens when you have a bunch of people crowded in a little space and they're not very clean, and you don't have toilets, and it's just kind of nasty. And so people get sick and they start getting sick. Well, it's even worse. You're going to love this. This is this dream class. Actually, let me skip, before I read this, let me skip up. Dorothy Mills talks about an operation up here in Thrace. Are you with me? And there's an Athenian general who was sent to relieve a siege, and he got there too late, and the city fell, and he didn't make it. And So they were really mad at him for being late, and they said, "We're banishing you. We're banishing you from the city." And his name was Thucydides. And because he got banished and he didn't get to be a general anymore, he wrote a history book of the Peloponnesian War, which some of parents over there are familiar with. And Thucydides, it's not as bad as it looks. Okay, it's got maps and stuff, but it's a lot of words. Anyway, Thucydides got the plague because it didn't kill everybody. It killed a lot of them. I don't know what percent, but he got the plague, and he actually told us what it was like.
They don't like small.
Wait, did you recover?
Apparently, because Thucydides did, but not everybody. But I don't think the recovery rate was great, Jesse. He says, not many months after their arrival in Attica, the plague first began to show itself among the Athenians. It was said that it had broken out in many places previously in the neighborhood of Limnos and elsewhere, but a pestilence of such extent and mortality was nowhere remembered. Neither were the physicians at first of any service, ignorant as they were of the proper way to treat it. But they died themselves most thickly, as they visited the sick most often, nor did any human art succeed any better. I'm skipping down. He says, I had the disease myself and watched its operation in the case of others. As a rule, there was no ostensible cause. People in good health were all of a sudden attacked by violent heats in the head and redness and inflammation in the eyes, the inward parts, and such as the throat or tongue, becoming bloody and emitting an unnatural and fetid breath, bad breath. These symptoms were followed by sneezing and hoarseness, after which the pain soon reached the chest and produced a hard cough. When it fixed in the stomach, it upset it. In most cases, also, an ineffectual retching followed by violent spasms. In some cases, ceased soon after, and others much later. Externally, the body was not very hot to the touch, nor pale in its appearance, but reddish, livid, and breaking out into small pustules and ulcers. But internally, it burned, so that the patient could not bear to have on him clothing or linen, even of the very lightest description, or indeed to be otherwise than stark naked. What they would have liked best would be to throw themselves into cold water, as indeed was done by some of the neglected sick who plunged into the rain tanks in their agonies of unquenchable thirst, though it made no difference whether they drank little or much. Besides this, the miserable feeling of not being able to rest or sleep never ceased to torment them. They succumbed, in most cases, on the 7th or 8th day. It says some were seized with an entire loss of memory on their first recovery and did not know either themselves or their friends. Oh, sounds awful. And just everybody's getting sick. Yes, Matthew. No, do not complain when you get a cold or flu. This obviously, A, weakened Athens because they lost people, they lost potential fighters. B, it's really depressing. C, they really got mad at Pericles because Pericles wouldn't let him out of the city. Then Pericles got the plague and he died. And as soon as he died, everybody forgot Pericles' advice. Just stay in the city. Like, no, we're going to go out and fight those Spartans in the field, which brings on 30 years. It's hard to say what would have happened if they had just hung on a few more years and not gone out and fought, and maybe Sparta would have gotten tired of it and just made peace. This is getting us nowhere. Let's just have a treaty. But they didn't. They went out and they started fighting. And there's one particular fight that I want to talk about. But first, Dorothy Mills also makes an interesting comment. Let me see what time we got. Oh, we're fine. About democracy. Pericles set up a complete democracy in Athens. Before, they had a lot of voting freedom, but Pericles set up everybody votes for everything. Well, everybody. Citizens, all right? Not slaves, not women, not children, and not just foreigners. But every male citizen of Athens gets to vote for everything. But and we like the sound of that. We love the fact that we get to vote for things. Wouldn't you agree? We like the fact that we get to vote. But there can be a dark side. Yes, MK. Well, I don't know. You know, honestly, I'm going to say this. I don't think the women really cared. Um, it's not with their house. I just, I just can't deal with all of that. I've got enough on my mind to deal with. I'm not sure they cared. Yeah, I'm not sure women throughout history have felt put upon because they couldn't vote. But that's a discussion for another time, which we can agree to disagree about. But there is a downside to democracy as a government, as a governmental form. Dorothy Mills says this, and this particular democracy, every office in the state of Athens was filled by popular election each year. What if every year we got all new rulers? Every year, we just sweep them all out and get new ones. So there was constant change amongst those in authority, and Athens could never be sure of any settled policy in her affairs, either at home or abroad. The supreme and final authority lay in the assembly, but like all popular assemblies, it could be swayed. And at several critical moments in the history of Athens was swayed by sudden outbursts of passion or by the fiery eloquence of an unwise or an ambitious and self-seeking speaker. When you get a group of people together and you find someone who's a really good speaker, they can get big groups of people to do just about anything, honestly. They'll just vote for practically anything. And this happened several times. I think I told you the story that during this war, Athens once voted, they had a rebellious island over here, and they voted to kill everyone on the island. And then they slept on it, and they came back the next day and said, you know, I don't think we should kill them all. Maybe we'll just kill the ringleaders and we'll enslave some people, and that's good enough. So they sent a second ship and just hope and pray it gets there before the first ship with the first message to kill everybody. And it did, because they sailed like gangbusters, all sails on. You know, they wanted to get there in time. And they did. They made it in time, and they saved everybody. They changed their minds overnight. So you might be able to see why this war drags on and drags on and drags on, because they're changing their policy every year. They can't decide what they're going to do, how they're going to. And Sparta has the two kings for life, a steady policy. So it says, for a time, success lay with the Athenians, and they forced a Spartan garrison to surrender to them at Sphacteria on the west coast of the Peloponnese, a victory which greatly encouraged them. I have to tell you the story of Sphacteria, because it's just so fun. All right, so Pylos. Pylos is in the Peloponnese, and it's on the coast. And the Athenians had a general, and he said, you know what we need? We need to invade Pylos. And then we have a base of operations, and we can just hit the Peloponnese, you know, from there. So he goes and he attacks Pylos. The Spartan garrison sails away, runs away, and they hole up on a little island that I can kind of see. It's kind of in the crack, but you guys can see. That island is Sphacteria. So the Athenians all right, so here's the land, and here's this island, okay? And so they station ships, you know, they blockade it, and they're just waiting to starve them out. They don't really know how many are on the island, and it's all covered in trees, so they can't really see what's going on. And nobody's real keen to just land a boat and get out and start fighting Spartans who may or may not jump out of the trees at me. So, stalemate. Back in Athens, they're saying, are they ever going to end the siege of Sphacteria? What is going on? Thucydides tells us the whole story. I'm not going to read the whole story, but I will read you bits. Okay, it says, meanwhile, the Athenians at Pylos were still besieging the Spartans in the island, the Peloponnesian forces on the continent remaining where they were. The blockade was very laborious for the Athenians, from want of food and water, for there was no spring except one in the citadel of Pylos itself, and that not a large one. And most of them were obliged to scrape away the gravel on the beach and drink such water as they could find. They also suffered from want of room, being encamped in a narrow space. And as there was no anchorage for the ships, some took their meals on shore in their turn, while others were anchored out at sea. But their greatest discouragement arose from the unexpectedly long time which it took to reduce a body of men shut up on a desert island with only brackish water to drink, a matter which they imagined would take only a few days. The fact was, the Spartans had made advertisement for volunteers to carry into the island flour, wine, cheese, and other food useful in a siege. High prices were offered and freedom promised to any of the helots who should succeed in doing so. They're hiring smugglers at the highest prices. The helots, accordingly, were most forward to engage in this risky traffic, putting off from this or that part of the Peloponnesus, running in by night on the seaward side of the island. They were best pleased, however, when they could catch a wind to carry them in. It's a divers also swam in under the water from the harbor, dragging by a cord in skins poppy seed mixed with honey and bruised linseed. These at first escaped notice, but afterwards a lookout was kept for them. They've got boats coming in by night on the seaside, the side away from the land. It's dark, they can dodge the Athenian ships that are sailing back and forth. And people there, for crying out loud, diving, swimming all the way out to the island and smuggling food out. And these guys can just hold out indefinitely because they've got food coming in. So then, moving on, it says one of the Athenian soldiers who were compelled by want of room to land on the extremities of the islands and take their dinners. Okay, I'm Athenian. This is my boat. Oh, I don't like eating I'm just going to land at the tip of the island. I'm just going to make a little fire, just cook my fish, whatever, and then get back on my boat and start cruising around again. Just a little campfire. No. With outposts fixed to prevent a surprise, set fire to a little of the wood without meaning to do so. And as it came on to blow soon afterwards, almost the whole was consumed before they were aware of it. They just burned down the forest. They burned down a huge part of the forest, which, now A, we can see the Spartans. We know how many of them there are. B, we're not so afraid to land on the island and attack. But it's not that easy because the Spartans are still amazing fighters. Do I want to read that? The Spartans became unable to dash out with the same rapidity as before upon the points attacked. And the light troops, finding they now fought with less vigor, became more confident. Spartans are losing their energy, losing their momentum because things have not gone their way. Finally, it says, proclamation. Okay, they wished to take the Spartans alive to Athens and hoped that their stubbornness might relax on hearing the offer of terms. They might surrender and yield to the present overwhelming danger. Proclamation was accordingly made to determine whether they would surrender themselves and their arms to the Athenians to be dealt with at their discretion. Now, remind me, how do Spartans feel about surrendering? What do their moms say? Yeah. No handing over of your weapons. But it says, Thucydides says, when the Spartans heard this offer, most of them lowered their shields and waved their hands to show they accepted it. We surrender. Thucydides tells us they started out with 420 hoplites on the island. 292 made it through alive. So 120, 130 or so dead. They took 292 hostages basically back. And it says of these, 120 were Spartiates. That means they are the true blue Spartans, taken from their parents when they were 7 years old and fed on the black broth and stealing food and the whole training. And they were very valuable to the Spartans, 120 of them. Well, Athens hoped they would use them as a bargaining chip, and they actually did later. They had a leader named Nicias, and he tried to negotiate a peace, and part of the peace was, we will give you back the prisoners from Sphacteria. It was it was like a 30-year truce, 50-year truce. It lasted 2 or 3 years. Okay. But the end of the story is that when I got to go to Greece, I brought my, because I didn't have a picture of this made. I went to the museum that has, it's the stuff from the Agora, the marketplace. And this was there. It says Spartan shield taken at Sphacteria. It's what, I know.
What is it?
This is me. Like, I'm telling my son, it's a shield from Sphacteria. He's like, Mom, calm down.
Wait, what is it?
People, it's a Spartan shield. It's one of the shields from the Spartans that they took on that island. The Spartans who gave up. I'm sorry, obviously I'm very excited about this. But look how dented, look at how crazy dented. This thing's seen some sword blows. I mean, it's just a metal circle. I realize that. I'm getting all excited about it, but it was pretty big. It was like this big. It was big. Yeah, that would have been good to have somebody standing next to it. But this is, and it's labeled. I think it says labeled taken at Pylos, but it's from the battle of Sphacteria. I think so.
So they really did come back on their shields.
Yeah, they did. And so what I'm wondering is, what was life like for these guys when they went back to Sparta? See, this is the unfinished part of the story that I really want to know. Did people chew them out? I can't believe you didn't just die on the island. You gave up. You gave up. Because there were other cases, like at Thermopylae, somebody gave up. Well, the guys who didn't go back to fight, the guy who had a chance to go back and fight and didn't. He was tormented by other people until he finally just went into the next battle with reckless abandon and died like a suicide mission just to prove he wasn't a coward. So I wonder what happened to these guys after they surrendered and then went back. So Pericles dead, they embarked on this reckless war plans, fighting all over the Eastern Mediterranean. And next week, I want you to finish that chapter 16, and read the rest of the Peloponnesian War. There, you're going to meet a young man named Alcibiades. And he was young, good-looking, rich, and threw awesome parties, and liked racehorses. And I'm sure he'd have race cars if he's that sort, and he wasn't very wise. He was fun, but not wise. And his name's Alcibiades, and you're going to meet him in the rest of this chapter. And he's going to tell the Athenians to embark on the stupidest war plan of all time, maybe. Anyway, finish chapter 16, and we'll finish out the war next week. What is our time? Yeah, okay. What? Except, I'm just say something really mean. I'm being recorded. Like, I said, good looking. So sorry. I'm so sorry. So sorry. Okay. Because he's not. All right. I just. Okay. Let's look at what we're going to do for our writing. You guys, troopers that you are, have written nonfiction reports for me for many weeks now, and maybe you're tiring of that. If you are not, I'm sorry, we're not going to do another one right away. If you are, yay, you have a chance to do something else. We are going to do some fiction. Now, Matthew, I can't please everyone. No matter what I say, somebody says, oh. So we have previously, all we've done is retold those stories in 3 paragraphs, right? And I think, didn't I give you an opportunity to I did a thing where it was keep the problem the same, but you can make up characters or setting or whatever you want. The 3, yes, for the Greek myths. Here's what we're going to look at. So Matthew groaned, but who likes, if you have to write, who prefers to write fiction? Okay. And you know what, Matthew? Maybe you don't prefer to write at all. I prefer to write nonfiction. I'm not very creative, but I can summarize facts pretty well. And so that's what I prefer to do. See, Matthew, you are my compatriot in that. I too would rather just take notes but my oldest daughter is a writer. She's a creative writer. And so eh, but we can always work with both kinds. We can always get better at both kinds. So even if it's not your forte, let's give it a shot. Yes, Jesse. What? Oh no, I haven't. Yes. See, but I like that. You're eager. Eagerness. That's a good quality, eager. So maybe you fiction writers have heard this before. But they say that good fiction comes from showing your reader what's going on or how people feel instead of just telling them, right? So I could say Joe was angry. There's nothing grammatically wrong with this, and it's fine, and it communicates what I want to say. Yes. Okay. Or I could say Joe slammed the door behind him as he stomped into the room. Now, I did not tell you that Joe was angry, but I'm pretty sure we know Joe's angry. Because maybe we've done some slamming and stomping too, and we know what that feels like. I can show you something. I can weave in the details without just saying the facts. Listening like it's a report, like we're writing a report. Yes. Maybe Joe is furious. Yes. Yes. Does that make sense to everybody? And so the basic things that a story needs to show you are the elements of the setting and the characters, right? They are, open up, get a blank sheet of paper. Just, I don't care if it's in the notebook, in your reading guide or other, and write this down. Who, what, when, where, why. This assignment actually has nothing to do with Greek history too, in case you're wondering. I'm just gonna do it for fun, because you guys have worked hard. Okay? Those are the things that we need. Can you see, Dalton? Can I? Okay. These are the things we need to communicate when we're writing. These are the things your reader's going to want to know. And I could very boringly say, there was a guy named Joe. He's angry. This was yesterday. You know, he was at the Hy-Vee because he wanted some milk. You know, I mean, that's a very boring story, all right? But that would give you the who, what, when, where, why. Or I could tell you a story about Joe that would weave in those elements. So here's what I'd like you to do this week. You are going to choose a story. I would like it to be a story which you think I would be familiar with. For this reason, I highly recommend fairy tales or Aesop's fables, that sort of thing. Although Star Wars and Harry Potter are totally acceptable. I am familiar with both of these worlds, and I would understand what you were talking about. Although my daughter dressed up as you're going to know it, Twi'lek. Okay, the blue people with the two things. She painted herself blue, and if anyone wants to see a picture, I have a picture on my phone. Anyway, I'm like, what? You're a what? Yes, okay, I'll show you a picture later. Anyway, so I'm not familiar enough that I know all the names of all the weird aliens. I do, ask me later. Okay, but anyway, choose a story that you are pretty sure, like Sleeping Beauty, Cinderella, Goldilocks, Red Riding Hood.
Basically, we could just find the Aesop fable.
Yes. But now listen carefully to this. All right, you guys who are having a conversation, listen to this. This is an important element. You're not going to tell the whole story. I want you to give me a description of a moment in the story. Here's what it's going to look. I have an example I did. All right, so don't worry. I'm gonna read. I did it myself. I did the exercise. I wrote the paragraph. I'll show you. But for example, I'm going to pick Goldilocks. Everybody knows Goldilocks and the Three Bears. Am I safe? Okay. And so I am going to choose a character. I'm going to choose a character. Goldilocks. I'm making a little chart for myself. What is she doing? I'm going to pick the moment when she's going up to the bear's door to go in. But that's the moment I've chosen. You could choose any other. She's eating the porridge. She's breaking the chair. It could be any moment. What is she doing? She's heading toward door. When is this happening? I don't know. I'm going to say it's around noon. No, because they're not home. They're not. No, see, yeah, but they're waiting. They're just waiting for their porridge to cool. I have to remember. So I'm going to say that it's about noon. Although if you did that in your story, all the things you're shouting out, that's totally fine. I'll skip down to why. Why? Because she's hungry and she smells porridge. I'm not sure I know how to spell porridge. I think that's it. Okay. And where is she? She's in a forest. All right. Now, notice something. I didn't do a lot of detail here. I didn't do a lot of detail. Now, I'm going to choose another character. Another character. Because I'd love you to, I did two. If I did two, you can do two. All right. I'm going to choose Baby Bear. Can I just call him BB for short? All right. What is happening? Let's do the moment he finds his chair broken. So that's sad. Oh, no, yeah, because he's yeah. No, because it's little. You know, she breaks things that are little. So what? He's upset over chair. When is this happening? Oh, it must be mid-afternoon because it's after Goldilocks has come in. She's apparently asleep right now. Where he's in the living room. And why? But yeah, how tired from his walk. And he wanted to sit down in his chair. For crying out loud, he just wanted to sit down in his chair. It's all he wanted from life. Some porridge and a chair that wasn't broken. And then what I'd like you to do, and now this is where my example comes in, okay, is to try to write one paragraph. You're not telling me the whole story. I don't need to know anything about her napping. I don't need who's been sleeping in my bed. I don't need that if you haven't chosen that moment, okay? And I want you to see, instead of saying, there was a girl named Goldilocks. She was walking towards a door. It was noon. She was in a forest. She smelled food and she was hungry. That's, okay, that tells me everything, but then it's just not a good story, frankly. Try it like this. Now, my example is not brilliant, but it will show you what I mean, okay? I did, yes. No. Matthias's question was, do you have to write on Goldilocks? No, I just choose. I knew that was going to happen. I knew it. Choose a story that you think I'm going to know, because it's not fun for me, frankly, if you just introduce a bunch of characters and I don't even know what they're talking about. All right, here, do you want, I have extras. It's not, don't get too excited. Oh, it should be awoke. Typo. All right. MK has already found a typo, which my eyes have been reading as awoke, but I'm sorry. Okay, here we go. Listen. Hey, yes. No, I just made that up. Okay, guys, stop talking. Thank you. I'm going to read the example. And so I did the tortoise and the hare. And so I chose the morning of the race between the tortoise and the hare. You can do the tortoise and the hare. Yes. I'm not, it's public domain. You can use it. So I decided for the tortoise, who a tortoise, what is he doing waking up excited? When is this happening? Early on a spring morning. Where is he? On top of a rock. Why is he there? Because he was too slow to get in the night before. Because he's a tortoise. Yes, Jesse. Share it with the class? Well, I would love to, but I wish that I don't have enough time. I know. Maybe you could share with each other over lunchtime. I mean, I won't get to hear it, but well, I guess I got to read it, so everybody shares with me. I would love to, Jesse. I really would, but unfortunately, I will run out of time. Okay, here's the paragraph I wrote. It has the IEW dress ups because at the time I wrote this, I was doing that. Okay, that's okay. I'm not asking you to do it. Okay, here we go. On a pleasantly warm spring morning, Tommy Tortoise awoke, stretched, and began clambering down from the rock on which he had fallen asleep the previous night. Feeling a sense of excitement building within him, he remembered with a start. Today was the day he would show his skeptical woodland friends what determination could accomplish. As he slid gently off the rock where he had fallen asleep when darkness overtook him, he began to mentally prepare for the task that lay before him. Finally, he would give that upstart Harvey Hare a reason to respect him. Okay, I tried to the best of my ability to weave in all those details without just telling you. I did say on a warm spring morning, but I didn't just say it was a warm spring morning. On a spring morning, this happened. He clambered down from the rock on which he had fallen asleep. He starts talking about the excitement. See, I show that he's excited. He says, I'm feeling a sense of excitement building within him. I could have left that out. I feel like the rest of it shows this character is excited about what's going to happen. Does that make sense? I'm not saying you can't ever make a statement, he's excited or it's a spring morning, but if you can just practice weaving it together instead of just like a report, listing the facts. Yes, Rhett. I would love for you to do 2 paragraphs. Okay, because that's why, remember we did 2 characters? Here's my other character, the hare. He's waking up tired on the same early spring morning on the floor of his burrow. Why is he there? Because I decided he was spring cleaning and he was exhausted. Harvey Hare opened one eye and peered around the burrow which he had called home for the past 2 years. After a full day of furious spring cleaning, he had fallen asleep in exhaustion on the now spotlessly clean floor. When spring hit the meadow, Harvey always felt increased energy and excitement. Combining that pent-up energy with his utter distaste for clutter, he'd embarked the previous morning on a cleaning spree lasting far into the night. It was long but rewarding. Tiredly lifting himself from the floor, he opened his eyes wide as he remembered the appointment he had scheduled a week ago. Only 2 hours until his race with Tommy. See, that was the joke, that he was tired because he was up all night spring cleaning. That was my little joke. So I said it sometimes, but I tried to show you he's lifting himself off the floor. He's exhausted. I'm showing you as much as possible with the action and just telling you the facts as little as possible. Yes?
Can I please do 2, like instead of doing 2 paragraphs on one topic, should I do 2 topics?
Two different stories, you mean?
Yeah.
I have no problem with that. I have no problem with that. So does that make sense to everybody? It will not be perfect. I'm not looking for perfect. I'm just looking for just let your imagination run wild. That's what I did. I tired. Well, it's probably I wrote this when I was spring cleaning or something, and so then I was tired, and that popped into my head. Just use your imagination. Think about the situation in the story, and just let your imagination go. But remember, don't tell me the whole story. Give me a snapshot of a moment. Okay, you first, and then yours. Yes. Yes. No, because I'd really like it to be a story I'm familiar with, so I can enter into it. That is a really good question, and no, you do not. Did everybody hear MK's question? Because it's of great import. She asked, do you have to include the simile alliteration and an ing opener? And I said, no, you do not, unless you just want to. You can. But I would like to see if you can just let your imagination go. Okay? Are we good? Oh, yes, Dalton. I'm sorry.
We only have one.
What? Yes, do it this week. You can do it this week. This is not crazy hard. I mean, for some of us, it's harder than others, right, Matthew? But no, I'm not a good writer, fiction. But that's if I can churn that out, you guys can give me something, okay? If I can do it, can you use two different stories? Can you use two different stories for your two different paragraphs? And I said, yes, you can. I don't see any reason why not. Yes, Matthew.
Personally, I was thinking that I was thinking really good on these, and I feel like there's no one gonna be able to do as good as that. So.
Oh, well, thank you. I'm excited about what you're going to see, and also I just thought you guys needed a reward and a break from writing reports. Yes. But I know, but I'm a learner too. Do you guys know what? I'm going back to school in January. I got into my master's program. I applied for a Master of Humanities with a classical education concentration. But I want to learn to do this better, Matthias. I could do better. Plus, I just want to be with smart people that will tell me interesting things. Anyway, so I'm signing up for one class. So I will have papers to write too, again, and that sort of thing. So I feel your pain. No, I don't, because I'm doing it voluntarily. I don't have to do this. I just want to. Okay, Catabubastes. Any questions? So far, you're writing me two paragraphs with snapshots of a moment in a story, showing me instead of just telling me, if you can, and finishing chapter 16. Okay? For the Catabubastes, I want you to read the next 5 chapters, right? 11 through 15. This week, in this week's reading, the cat got killed. And how do Amuba and Jethro feel about that? What do they think of the whole hubbub over the cat? Go ahead. Are they worried? Are Amuba and Jethro worried that a cat got killed? No, like it's a cat. They don't care. What a crazy world where you kill cats and you have a meltdown over it. Remember when Chebron fought off that alligator, that crocodile? It's a crocodile. Do they have both in Egypt? Alligator, crocodile? To me, this is interchangeable, but I know it's technically not. And he was worried that he had done something bad because he had wounded a crocodile. And his dad said, well, they don't worship the crocodiles up there at the mouth of the Nile. Did we talk in this group about Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt?
I've learned about it, but I didn't learn about it in.
Because they talk about that in this book. So this is the Nile, and this is it's got all these mouths that feed into the Mediterranean. This is the Mediterranean, okay? And the thing is, this is Upper Egypt, and this is Lower Egypt. Do you remember this? And it's just, when you read Egyptian books, it's very irritating. Does anybody know why? Why, Matthew?
Because with the way that Egypt is, it's like over here is like more mountainous kind of and stuff, and the Nile flows down that into it flows the wrong way, it flows up.
The Nile flows up. And so just like if we go upstream, up the Mississippi, we're going against the flow. And if we go downstream, we're going with the flow. Well, if you go upstream, you're going to Upper Egypt, but you're going south on a map. Because we just agree, don't we, that north will be up on a map? We just sort of all agree that. And if we don't have a map like that, I mean, it's good to always put a key on your map. That if it's arranged, if it's oriented differently, they will put a key somewhere, right? Saying this way is north. And so it's just sort of random that we decide that that's the way the world should look on maps. It flows south. It flows from Minnesota down to the Gulf of Mexico. So this is why. So when they talk about Upper and Lower Egypt in the book, that's what they're talking about. Actually, we were going to talk about death and animals in Egypt today. Since they are so worried, we saw 2 deaths. Amiri's older son, Nico, got murdered. And of course, we know that there's a conspiracy against Amiri's and his whole family to take them out because Amiri's doesn't seem to be, to the Egyptians, what orthodox in his belief, we would say. He wants to spread the news that the gods aren't really gods and there is one great God. And they don't like this, partly because they make their money from people bringing offerings to the temple. And if people don't think the cat or the crocodile or this god or that god are gods anymore, people aren't going to bring them stuff and they will lose their jobs. So I thought today would be interesting to talk about death in Egypt in various forms. My first interesting thing, and a lot of this stuff you might have run into, but some of you may not have talked about this before when you were younger. Here is, first of all, the cat goddess, a statue of the cat goddess, Bastet. She interestingly has earrings and a nose piercing. Can you imagine giving your cat a nose piercing? Can't even clip their claws. It's not going to go well. It says the cat goddess Bastet was the daughter of Re, the sun god. She represented the power of the sun to ripen crops. Many bronze cat figures were dedicated to her in the now ruined temple in the Northeast Delta. That's the temple. There's the temple where Mary's cat was going to go be the temple cat. There really is a temple for the cat goddess, and it is full of cat statues. Yes, Jesse.
Did Egyptians actually believe that that was
I don't think so, but I don't even know those particular terms. You guys ask the most amazing stuff, and now it's going to bother me for the rest of the day. It's like, when did we start calling? No, but you know what? Oh, I do know this. So, because I'm reading just for kicks and to make my Latin better, I read a little bit of the Aeneid in Latin every day. I just work through 30 lines or something. Anyway, and they have a Latin word for the east wind, the north wind. If they have Latin names for the wind, the directions of the winds, then they have names for the directions. And sometimes Virgil uses the wind name for the direction. So they were using directions then. But as far as making maps, I'm trying to think of a case in which I see the Romans or the Greeks referring to a map, like a written chart. I have no idea what the oldest map ever made was. So I don't know about the maps, but they were using the directions. The Romans were using the directions. I know that. Yes, Matthew. It would. It would. But you know what? They made some really good maps in the age of exploration in the, in the 1500s. Uh, the maps got better and better. Just from people sailing along the coastlines. Okay. Anyway, I have this crazy picture. It's a cat mummy. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. With the goofy face. With this stupid, goofy cat face. I'm sorry. I'm just making opinion judgments all over the place this morning. It says, this is what, I'll just read the description. Cats, sacred to the goddess Bastet, were mummified when they died. They were wrapped in linen bandages and their faces were painted to make them look bewildered or just plain silly. They were put in cat-shaped coffins and were sold to temple visitors who could then take them to the temple burial grounds and dedicate them to the goddess Bastet. I feel forget the lemonade stand. Start the mummified cat. I just selling the mummified cats because there are cats all over the place. You could gather no. Yes. I don't think so because I really think, Rhett, that they actually felt like Chebron feels in the book, that this was a sacrilege. They are not the only people in the world. If I am remembering this correctly, Hindus, cows are sacred to Hindus. You do not kill them, and they mean business. You do not kill them. You do not mess with them. And so, we talked when we talked about the Greek myths about God revealing himself to the world in various ways, in various truths, but once upon a time, everybody knew God. Adam knew God, right? Cain and Abel knew God. Cain chose poorly in his knowledge, but they knew him. And if you think about how long Adam lived, many generations could have come to talk to Adam. But little by little, people twist the truth. And it's just amazing to me that the truth gets twisted to the point where we think cats or crocodiles are gods or cows. But, the Apostle Paul says that they fell for a delusion. They believed the lie. And part of the lie is that the created things are gods. Created things are not gods. But it's pretty twisted. Yeah, MK. See, it's a bummer. There's no hamburgers there. No steaks. So not only, and you guys know this, not only did they mummify animals, but the most important thing is people. People. And so, and you've probably read books about this. So not everybody gets mummified in Egypt. And they had 3 grades, apparently. It's like the economy. The economy mummy, the mid-grade, and then the super mummy. And it differed on how long they worked on you. Yes. So, but they, and I was very quick to say this yesterday because everybody loves the brains out the nose thing. Do we all know about that? And because they thought your brain, it was just a worthless piece of tissue. They did not think brains were important. They did not know what it did. But other parts of you, they did. And so I think it was the stomach and the intestines and the lungs and the liver. They would take these 4 out and they had jars. They're called canopic jars. And they would put the innards into these jars. I'm telling you this for a reason. Oh, I know there was a picture, but did I mark the picture? No. And it was right there on that side of the page. Hang on. See. Well, we were talking about that yesterday, and I think it's because, I found it. Hey guys, shh. Okay, first of all, here's the jars. And each of them has a, can you hold on to the heart? Who said the heart? Hold on to that. So here's the jars. And they each had an animal head. And an internal organ goes in each one.
Can you do that for me? Whenever I die?
Do you want the economy or the bonus? Nobody's doing that anymore. So the reason I'm showing you this is because, yes, Mrs. Ferguson has a canopic jar. Oh, because my son is so weird. No, okay, so here's what my husband, no, I'm going to answer your question. Here's what my husband wanted me to do. He said, you should get some sausages. And then pull them out. I said, I didn't want to sully my jar. And I'm like, I'm not going to get raw meat, and I don't know where to get fake meat on short notice. But if my husband had had his way, I could have said, oh, look what's here. And yes, Matthew. See, yes. I could have put red spaghetti or something. Okay, so let me read this. This is the card that came with it. It says canopic jars were in use from the Old Kingdom onwards. Shh. Old Kingdom is when they were building the pyramids. The Old Kingdom is Abraham time, before Abraham time. To store various internal organs removed during the process of mummification. There were 4 in number and eventually came to represent the 4 sons of Horus. Each jar had a characteristic head associated with a demigod charged with safekeeping a particular human organ. And it says Kebesenuf. That's my best shot. The falcon-headed jar, representing the west, contained the intestines and was protected by the goddess Selket. So I will leave this out. You can come see it after. Don't drop it, but if you want to check it out. But this was very cool for my son. Then they dry you out with salt, natron, and you last an incredible length of time when they dry you out like that. In Egypt, where it's very dry anyway. And yes, Rhett, and I'm going to show you a picture. I don't think so. I mean, I don't think so. And in fact, I think even before ancient times were, hey guys, please. I think maybe even before ancient times were over, they weren't really doing it as much. So this is a picture. I mean, it's amazing. Your skin doesn't rot. It turns sort of like leather. So you'll love this Halloween week. It says this mummy is, I'm looking for a date. I can't find it. But so this is, I'm sure this guy is at least 3,000 years old, 3,500 years old. And the important, shh, guys, please be respectful. I mean, I want to have fun, but when we get out of control, then we can't have fun anymore. Okay. He's still got skin. He's still got skin. It's amazing. These are the wrappings because apparently they stick to you after 3,500 years. You know, it's hard to remove them, but it was amazing that they could stay. I'm not going to come around, but this is a picture of one of the Ramesses, and he still. I mean, he looks just like a guy. It's kind of freaky. You can see his features. He just looks like a guy. And he's several thousand years old. He's not rotted. Okay, yes, Jesse first.
Not this right, I guess. Yeah, okay. Oh, yeah. That's what makes it not tasting like and feeling like. Okay. Yeah, it's like a rough kind of like and it feels like that fabric that you like see the stick and stuff to them. Like,
Do any of you remember, or do any of you know why they went to the trouble to do this? Because it seems like a lot of trouble. What? Yes, for a particular reason. Do you know? So they had this idea that you have two spiritual entities in you, and one is called your ba and one is your ka, and they have different purposes. I know. I'm sorry. They're called ba and ka, and I can't fix it. One of them goes to the underworld, and here's your heart question. When you go to the underworld, you are going to be judged. Okay, I'm Egyptian now. I'm telling you Egyptian belief, okay? And what they're going to do is they're going to take your heart, which I don't know how that works if your heart is back in your body, but anyway, don't ask questions, just trust, I mean, no, I'm not telling you not to ask questions. I'm just saying it doesn't make total sense, but you just have to accept it. And they have scales, and they put your heart in one side of the scales, the scales with two pans. And then they put a feather in the other. And if your heart is heavier than the feather, you are sinful and wicked, and you will be punished. But if your heart is pure, apparently it will be light as a feather, and you will not be punished. You will go through various checkpoints in the underworld, and you will have to answer questions. They will ask you about your life. They will grill you about your life. And well, Matthias, that means ask you tough questions, okay? And you have to answer. You have to know the answers. And I'm going to show you something that has to do with the answers, but first I'm going to let MK comment. What did you want to say? No, you see, but you're thinking scientifically. You're thinking in the wrong realm. This is mystical. This is mythology. So we have to accept certain things, So they have found, and last week somebody asked me how long papyrus lasts, right? And I said, I don't know. And then I got home and I said, well, you do know, which happens often. Because they find papyrus books sometimes in burials. And they call this book the Book of the Dead. Yes, this is from the same sun, not even the same Christmas. Okay. These are papyrus books illustrated with instructions of what's going to happen in the underworld and what you have to do. And the answers to the questions you're going to get asked. Because they're not specific to you, It's like, I have cheated no one. I have stolen, you give a recital. And you have to know the answers. And so they put the book in your tomb because you need to know the answers, which brings me to the other part of you, the ba and the ka. One of them goes to the underworld. The other one comes back and forth. And it uses the stuff in the tomb. It lives kind of a normalish life, but it can't come back if it can't recognize the body. If its body is rotted away, it has nowhere to come back to. It doesn't know where to come. So we need it to look like you. I hope he looked better than this, but we need it to look enough like you that your ba or ka, I can't remember, can come back and knows that it's him. And they didn't have an idea that the mummy got up and walked around or anything, got possessed by it. But it needed to come back. And this is why they filled tombs with board games, pots of honey, statues to represent slaves for the underworld. Thank goodness the Egyptians were not like those Scythians, right, with their merry-go-round to death, where they said, we're just going to kill 50 of you and throw you in with him, and you can be his servants in the afterlife. They represented it with little statues. They didn't kill people. As far as we know, the Egyptians, have you noticed this in the book? They don't, we have murderous conspirators, but they don't offer human sacrifices. They don't kill people for religious purposes in Egypt, which was very enlightened of them in a time when a lot of the world killed people for religious purposes. But that's why. That's why they went to this trouble. It's got to be recognizable, or it can't come back and do its thing. Yes. Has fangs? I don't know. I closed the book. His teeth are very prominent. Yes. Somebody else had a comment over there. Jesse, was it you? Well, but did he make it up? I mean, see, here's the, okay, now I'm skirting, I'm not saying that they're going to weigh my heart in scales with a feather, but we do go somewhere after we die. And we are, I mean, and this, in some Christian circles, this isn't popular, but Jesus said we are answerable for what we do. I'm not saying that's your entry into heaven, but we will be answerable for what we do, and there will be rewards based on what we do. Most definitely. Jesus said so. And so if Adam and Noah, knew the truth, and of course in the Old Testament we only get a faint glimmer, of afterlife, of what they just know you live. They know there's a place, and they know it's not good for you there if you were exceedingly wicked. And that's basically, I mean, is that a summary of Old Testament afterlife belief? There's really not a lot. Sheol. And you go to Sheol and you rest with your fathers. And we don't really know much more beyond that. But Jesse, so I don't mean that he didn't make it up. But first of all, I don't think one person probably sat down and engineered the whole thing. Things like this emerge over time. But everything we read about, everything that people believe, somehow came from the truth originally. It had to, because there was one group of people. There was one group of people, and then we started again with one group of people, right? Noah's family. And they knew the truth as much as it had been revealed to them. And everything else, it seems to me, everything else has to be some sort of twisted version of the truth that everybody has, but some are more twisted than others, if that makes sense. Yes. No, atheism is a fairly new thing, just in the last, 500 years, a little bit beyond that. We had people here and there saying, I don't think there is a God. We have a lot of people who behave as if there isn't a God, but that's something else. But no, that's kind of a new thing. So yes, I think that if we could only see, this is my fantasy, that someday, like in heaven, I'll get to see how all the threads go back and all have a bit of the truth. Even if it is, like I said, that animals are special because God created them. Thomas Aquinas, who was a great medieval thinker, said, everything that exists is good in as much as it exists. Existing is a good. Having been created is a good, right? We do bad things with it. We're not all good people. And animals have become fierce and they, maul you. But the fact that it exists is good. Okay, Matthias, one more thing, and then I'll show you my last thing and I'll let you go. They're early. Yeah. I don't know. My son orders things. So I brought this. I will show you. Yes, from the same son. Later, I'll bring in my Roman coins next semester. Okay. I'll just read this. It says, her name means the dwelling of Horus. For it was thought that Horus, as the sun god, came to rest each evening on her breast before being reborn with the awakening dawn. Don't worry, they are early. Okay, they are early. Hathor is this great sky goddess that as a celestial cow gave birth to the universe. I like that. This is why she has horns. Celestial cow. She was often represented as a cow or with bovine attributes such as a cow's head. She was the goddess of joy and motherhood and the embodiment of all that is best in women. She was also considered goddess of music, song, dance, and pleasure, protectress of pregnant women and midwives, and goddess of love, so sometimes identified with Aphrodite. This is Hathor. I thought these were cool also because you see the hieroglyphics really well on these. So anyway, it's 10:08 according to my clock. So you've got a couple minutes. If anybody wants to come look at anything, look at the Book of the Dead, look at the Egypt book, you may. I'm going to go ahead and turn this off.
did they put vinegar in there or like